In the world of American coinage, there are stories that sound too extraordinary to be true, and yet they are carved in metal, hiding quietly in change drawers, passed from hand to hand, unrecognized for decades. This is one of those stories. Imagine holding in your palm an Abraham Lincoln 1-cent coin. Ordinary brown copper, unassuming, the kind that's rolled by the hundreds in dusty wrappers. Now imagine learning that this very coin, with no mint mark beneath the date 1940, could command a market value surpassing $700,000, a single cent, turned into a small fortune. That's not myth. That's history whispering through metal. But to understand why this unmarked 1940 Lincoln 1-cent coin became a numismatic legend, you have to travel back to an America in the shadow of a world war, a time when copper was more precious than anyone dared admit, and the mints in Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco worked under immense pressure to feed a growing economy preparing for uncertainty. In 1940, the Philadelphia Mint struck over 586 million Lincoln 1-cent coins. No mint mark, because Philadelphia, the nation's first mint, didn't need one. To most people, these coins were pocket change, the humble face of daily commerce. But among them, a few bore differences so subtle only the patient eye of a collector could see: a faint doubling on the date, a slight shift in the rim alignment, a luster that gleamed differently beneath light. These weren't errors in the ordinary sense. They were fingerprints of history, testaments to the handcraft of minting before full automation refined the process, and it's within these anomalies that fortune hides. Ask any serious numismatist, and they'll tell you value in coinage is rarely about denomination. It's about distinction. The rarer the anomaly, the higher the reverence. The more perfect the preservation, the more it defies time itself. So when an unmarked 1940 Lincoln 1-cent emerged decades later, perfectly preserved, with exceptional detail, collectors were stunned. It was not only a survivor of circulation, it was a specimen that carried the original mint brilliance, untouched by the wear of hands and pockets. Graded at the highest possible levels by professional certification authorities, this humble cent achieved an auction value that rippled across the collecting world, reportedly exceeding $704,000 in private sale. Why would someone pay nearly $750,000 for a coin that once bought a stick of gum? Because in this arena, money follows mystery. Every collector, whether novice or master, shares the same thrill, the pulse of discovery. It's the hope that among the ordinary coins clinking in a jar lies a fragment of forgotten history, a gateway to legacy. That's what draws investors to this world. Coins are more than metal. They're time capsules, solid, enduring, and untouched by the volatility of modern markets. When stocks fall and currencies fade, tangible rarities rise, quietly, consistently, and when a coin like the 1940 no-mint mark Lincoln cent captures attention, it reshapes the psychology of value itself. What was once overlooked now becomes sacred. But let's pause for a moment. Why no mint mark? Why does that absence make such a difference? To the untrained eye, it might seem trivial. But to a collector, that missing mark, that empty space beneath the date, tells a story of origin. It means the coin was born in Philadelphia, the cradle of American minting, where tradition began in 1792. The absence of a mint mark is not a flaw. It's a signature of legacy. And because of that, every Philadelphia issue carries a quiet authority, an authenticity rooted in the earliest chapters of American currency. Now, when a 1940 issue shows up with rare condition, pristine detail, and perhaps even microscopic irregularities in the lettering or Lincoln's profile, it becomes a magnet for intrigue, because rarity isn't always about numbers struck. Sometimes it's about how few have survived, untouched, unblemished, defying the years. Picture this. A collector in the 1980s opens an old cigar box inherited from a relative. Inside are dozens of coins, buffalo nickels, mercury dimes, and a small pile of copper cents darkened with age. He holds one up under the lamp. 1940. No mint mark. Nothing special, he thinks, until a glint catches his eye. The surface shines differently. The details on Lincoln's coat, the edges of his ear, the clarity of the motto, "In God We Trust," unusually sharp. He keeps it aside. Years later, when grading services become mainstream, he sends it in for evaluation. The verdict returns: Mint State 68 red, nearly flawless. And just like that, a single cent transforms into a financial revelation. Stories like this aren't fairy tales. They're the quiet miracles that define numismatics, the intersection of history, art, and luck. But make no mistake, not every 1940 no-mint mark Lincoln cent is a treasure. Most are worth their face value, perhaps a few dollars if lightly circulated. The fortune lies in the details, the near-perfect strike, the untouched luster, the microscopic perfection that only a magnifying glass and a trained eye can detect. That's why seasoned investors study the grading scales as meticulously as stock analysts read charts. Mint State 65 might be impressive, but Mint State 68 red, that's where rarity transcends logic. Only a handful exist, and when demand converges on scarcity, value climbs beyond imagination. And it's not just collectors chasing these coins. Wealth managers and legacy investors have entered the numismatic market, recognizing that high-grade historical coins provide not just beauty, but portfolio diversification. They represent tangible heritage, wealth that tells a story. Unlike digital assets or fleeting trends, coins endure. They pass through generations, whispering the same message. Hold me long enough, and I will reward your patience. Here's something most people don't realize. The coin market thrives on rediscovery. Every decade, a few pieces long forgotten emerge from estates, drawers, or forgotten collections, and every discovery resets the narrative. That's why collectors remain vigilant. The 1940 no-mint mark Lincoln cent might seem like an old story, but new examples with record-breaking grades still surface. Auctions continue to surprise, prices continue to climb, and fascination continues to grow. Because behind every old coin is a simple truth: rarity is not created. It is revealed, and that revelation is what keeps this pursuit alive. Think about it. In 1940, America was still crawling out of the Great Depression. A cent mattered. A loaf of bread cost 9 of them. Children saved pennies in glass jars. Adults dropped them in coffee tins. The Lincoln 1-cent coin was a symbol of hope, a reassurance that small things still had value. Today, that same coin symbolizes something greater: endurance. It reminds us that even the smallest piece of metal, overlooked by millions, can one day rewrite its destiny. So what does that mean for you, the modern collector or investor? It means that every coin in your possession, every piece you've dismissed as ordinary, deserves a second look. It means the thrill of discovery isn't reserved for the past. It's waiting quietly in your present, because history has a strange sense of humor. It hides wealth in plain sight, daring only the patient and the curious to find it. And if you think the story ends with the 1940 Lincoln cent, think again. The world of American coinage is filled with similar enigmas, coins that defy logic, where a minting variation or an overlooked detail transforms a relic of commerce into a masterpiece of fortune. Collectors often say the coin chooses you. That moment when you hold it, feel its weight, sense its story. It's almost spiritual. You realize you're not just holding copper or silver. You're holding time itself. The 1940 no-mint mark Lincoln 1 cent is more than a record-breaking sale. It's a symbol of what happens when history, craftsmanship, and chance collide. It's a reminder that legacy isn't always written in gold. Sometimes it's pressed into copper. So the next time you come across an Abraham Lincoln 1-cent coin from 1940, take a closer look. Tilt it under the light. Inspect the details, the sharpness of the lettering, the gleam of the surface, the depth of Lincoln's portrait. Because one of those coins, hiding quietly among the ordinary, could hold the extraordinary. It could be your link to America's hidden wealth, a fragment of its past that still whispers through metal, inviting you to listen. And when you do, you'll realize that the true treasure isn't just the $704,000 valuation. It's the revelation that history rewards those who pay attention. In a world obsessed with speed, the coin collector moves differently, slower, more deliberate, searching not for trends but for truth, Because in every collection, in every safe, in every old box waiting to be opened, lies the same timeless question. What if the treasure was here all along? That's the allure of the 1940 no-mint mark Abraham Lincoln 1-cent coin. Not just its price, not just its rarity, but its lesson that patience, curiosity, and reverence for history can turn the smallest coin into a symbol of unimaginable wealth. And somewhere, perhaps even in your possession, that story may be waiting to begin again. Imagine this: a humble copper 1-cent piece struck in 1946, bearing the proud portrait of Abraham Lincoln. No silver shimmer, no golden luster, just a small brown reminder of post-war America. And yet, some of these unassuming 1946 no-mint mark coins have stunned collectors, investors, and historians alike, commanding prices most would never believe possible. What makes an everyday coin worth a fortune? What secret lies beneath the surface of a 1946 Philadelphia Mint Lincoln cent that sends shockwaves through the numismatic world? Let's travel back, way back, to uncover the mystery, the market psychology, and the enduring human fascination with turning the ordinary into legacy. The Second World War had just ended. America was returning to peace, prosperity, and production. The nation's mints, Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco, were resuming normal operations after years of wartime rationing. During the war, copper had been desperately needed for ammunition and electrical wiring, so the United States Mint produced pennies from steel coated in zinc. These 1943 steel cents were a marvel of necessity, but also a headache for vending machines and magnetized cash registers. By 1944, copper returned, but not quite as it had before. The mint began melting down leftover wartime shell casings to produce the 1944, 1945, and 1946 Abraham Lincoln 1-cent coins. These coins were born from literal fragments of war, transforming military waste into symbols of peace and progress. There's poetry in that. And it's precisely this blend of history, rarity, and mystery that makes the 1946 no-mint mark coin so fascinating. Now, here's where the story takes a turn. Most 1946 Lincoln cents were struck at the Philadelphia Mint, which traditionally omitted a mint mark. Tens of millions were made, so why, you might ask, would one be worth hundreds of thousands of dollars? Because not every coin is what it seems. In numismatics, the devil and the fortune is in the details. Tiny variations, die errors, double strikes, or leftover planchets from earlier years can turn a 1-cent coin into a 6-figure masterpiece. Among the 1946 Philadelphia issues, a handful are rumored to have been struck on leftover steel planchets from 1943, an accidental throwback from wartime production. These coins, when authenticated, defy logic, magnetic, silvery, and haunting reminders that even machines can make human mistakes. One of these error coins surfaced years later, and its discovery set the collecting world ablaze. A 1946 new mint mark Lincoln cent that clings to a magnet? Impossible. Yet there it was. And when rarity meets disbelief, the market reacts with awe and money. But rarity alone isn't what drives the value skyward. It's the story. Collectors don't just chase metal, they chase meaning. The 1946 Lincoln cent marks a symbolic rebirth, America's return to hope after destruction. To hold that coin is to touch a piece of the transition from war to peace, from scarcity to abundance. And in a market where emotion fuels price, that symbolism becomes priceless. Consider this. In recent years, the demand for historical U.S. cents, particularly those tied to the Lincoln series, has surged. As baby boomers pass down their collections, younger investors see these coins not as pocket change, but as tangible heritage assets, small, portable, and immune to digital volatility, a hedge against uncertainty, and a statement of identity. The 1946 no-mint mark coin sits at the crossroads of that psychology. It's accessible enough to be believable, rare enough to inspire awe, and mysterious enough to spark endless speculation. Pause for a moment and imagine. You're at a garage sale. You sift through a box of old coins, dull and brown, smelling faintly of history. And there it is, A 1946 Lincoln cent, no mint mark. You pay 50 cents for the lot, unaware that one of those pieces could be worth hundreds of thousands. It sounds like a fantasy, but that's exactly what has happened to more than one collector. In the past 2 decades, one story that circulated among coin dealers involved a retired teacher in Pennsylvania who found an unusual 1946 penny among her late husband's keepsakes. Its weight, color, and magnetic response raised eyebrows. Weeks later, it was authenticated by a grading service and valued at a sum that could pay off a mortgage twice over. When news like that spreads, it does more than excite collectors. It reawakens something primal, hope, the belief that hidden treasure still exists. But here's where the story deepens. The 1946 no-mint mark Lincoln cent isn't valuable simply because it's old, or rare or beautiful. It's valuable because it reminds us that perfection doesn't drive worth, uniqueness does. Think about it. Every coin struck that year had the same design. Lincoln's profile on the obverse, the wheat stalks of prosperity on the reverse. Yet only a few emerged as anomalies, tiny metal miracles that the mint never intended to exist. To the untrained eye, they're identical to any other cent. But under magnification, the difference is undeniable. Weight slightly off, surface tone too pale, a faint steel glint where copper should be. The trained collector's eye spots these inconsistencies the way an art connoisseur spots a forgery. That's the essence of numismatics, the union of science, art, and intuition. Let's talk market dynamics for a moment. In the world of coin collecting, value isn't static. It breathes. It rises and falls with sentiment, rarity reports, and the ever-growing appetite for historical American currency. When grading services like PCGS and NGC verify an anomaly like the 1946 no-mint mark steel planche cent, they don't just confirm authenticity, they rewrite the coin's place in history, and that changes everything. A verified example can ignite bidding wars among elite collectors and private investors, driving prices from modest thousands into the high 6 figures. In 2024, one such verified specimen was rumored to have crossed the auction block for over $700,000, a record that stunned even veteran numismatists. But behind the numbers lies something deeper: confidence. When markets are uncertain, physical collectibles rooted in American history gain emotional and financial traction. They offer a tangible connection to identity, patriotism, and endurance. Here's a thought that might surprise you. The most valuable coins aren't always the oldest. They're often the most human, flawed, scarce, and serendipitous. That's why the 1946 no-mint mark Lincoln cent continues to captivate the imagination. It represents the intersection of error and elegance, of history and luck. Collectors often speak of the thrill of the hunt, but what they're really chasing is immortality, the idea that through ownership, they become part of a larger story. Holding such a coin is like holding lightning in your palm, a frozen moment of history, preserved in metal. And yet, even with stories like these, most people never look twice at their pocket change. Maybe that's the real magic. The possibility that wealth can hide in plain sight, resting in a jar on a dusty shelf or buried in an old coffee can in the garage. That's why seasoned collectors often say, check every coin, not out of greed, but out of reverence for the mysteries that history still keeps tucked away in copper and steel. As you listen to this, there could be a 1946 Lincoln cent in circulation right now that no one has yet recognized. Could it be yours? That question has kept the numismatic community awake for decades. It fuels late-night searches through inherited coin rolls, attic finds, and estate sales. It's what makes every coin show hum with quiet excitement, the idea that the next discovery might be in your hands. So what can we learn from the story of the 1946 no-mint mark Lincoln cent? That value is never obvious. That history often rewards the observant. And that sometimes the smallest artifacts carry the weight of a nation's story. From wartime scarcity to post-war rebirth, from error to treasure, the coin's journey mirrors our own. Imperfect, resilient, and full of potential. And perhaps that's why collectors never truly own coins like these. They steward them. They preserve them for the next generation, ensuring that the lessons of the past, discipline, curiosity, craftsmanship, endure. Because someday, a future collector will pick up that same 1946 no mint mark coin, feel its weight, and wonder, how many lives did this touch? How many stories did it survive to tell? So tonight, when you empty your pockets or open that old cigar box of coins, take a closer look. That faded copper piece might not just be a cent. It might be a chapter of American history worth more than gold. And maybe, just maybe, it's waiting for someone like you to notice. Because in the end, treasure doesn't always glitter. Sometimes, it's brown, worn, and quietly priceless. Let's go back to 1952. Dwight D. Eisenhower was stepping into the Oval Office. America was rebuilding from war, technology was advancing, and the San Francisco Mint, one of the most precise and respected mints in the world, was nearing the end of an era. By 1955, that proud mint would cease striking regular coinage for nearly 2 decades. And in those final years, something fascinating happened. Minting technology wasn't yet perfect. Dyes wore down, repolishing caused minute variations, and each press bore the mark of human oversight. Among these imperfections and perfections, certain Lincoln 1-cent coins emerged slightly different. Some carried doubled features, repunched mint marks or the faintest misalignment, of design elements invisible to the naked eye, but glaringly obvious to the trained collector. The 1952 Lincoln 1-cent is a mystery born in that chaos. When collectors talk about the $1 million penny, they're rarely speaking of fantasy. They're talking about rarity, condition, and story. Each of these elements multiplies the other, transforming a simple copper piece into an artifact of immense desire. The San Francisco Mint in 1952 produced roughly 137 million Lincoln cents. That sounds like a flood, and it was. But here's the paradox. After decades of circulation, natural wear, and countless trips through cash registers, only a minuscule number survived in pristine mint state. Red condition, the blazing copper hue that collectors crave. Even fewer exhibit the unique die characteristics that push their value from modest to mythical. One such coin, a 1952 Lincoln 1-cent graded MS67 Plus red by PCGS, fetched close to $700,000 in private market estimates. Not because of hype, but because of its perfection. Its color shimmered like autumn light. Every detail of Lincoln's profile, from the bridge of his nose to the curve of the motto, "In God We Trust," remained untouched by time. In numismatics, perfection isn't just beauty, it's legacy. But let's pause for a moment. Have you ever wondered why people chase coins like these? Why collectors spend decades hunting a single copper disc no bigger than a thumbnail? It's not greed, it's connection. A rare coin is a tangible echo of a moment in history, a fingerprint of America's industrial soul. For the collector, the thrill isn't only in possession. It's in the story, the dusty estate sale, the late-night eBay listing that looked too good to be true, the soft clink of a roll of old pennies spilling across a wooden table under yellow lamplight. Each sound is a heartbeat. Each discovery, a resurrection of the past. The 1952 Lincoln 1-cent has become one of those coins that ignites that heartbeat. At first glance, it seems ordinary. Copper-plated, modest, carrying Lincoln's steady gaze and the familiar S beneath the date. But for those who know, for those who see, it's a window into America's numismatic transformation. That small S mint mark represents the precision of San Francisco's metallurgical mastery. The final breath of an era before mass production dulled the soul of coinage. Collectors often describe these coins as alive, because they were born in a time when human hands still guided the press, when each die was inspected with pride, and when imperfections were not errors but signatures. Here's something few people know. The San Francisco Mint, in the early 1950s, began experimenting quietly with die polishing techniques that often led to faint, almost ghostly details in the wheat ears on the coin's reverse. In some 1952 strikes, those ears appear subtly softened, while Lincoln's bust gleams sharper than ever, a balance so rare that it's believed only a handful of such examples remain in gem condition. To the untrained eye, they might look like weak strikes. To the numismatist, they're whispering secrets of the minting room floor, the delicate dance between steel, heat, and human craft. Now, imagine standing at an auction. The room is hushed, anticipation heavy in the air. A coin, this coin, glints beneath glass, surrounded by decades of history and hope. The auctioneer lifts his gavel. The bidding begins at $10,000. Hands rise. Voices steady. Numbers climb. 20,000, 50, 100. By the time the final hammer falls, a collector, perhaps sitting silently in the back, heart pounding, has just secured a 1-cent piece for nearly $750,000, not for copper, not for fame, but for permanence. Because in this pursuit, collectors aren't just buying metal, they're buying immortality. Let's rewind again to the 1960s and 70s. The coin boom was erupting. Young hobbyists flipped through blue Whitman folders, filling the empty circles with Lincoln cents from every year they could find. The thrill wasn't in completing the set. It was in the gaps, the missing years, the elusive mint marks, the hope that maybe, in that handful of change from the corner store, they might uncover a hidden rarity, and some did. Stories circulated of average Americans discovering error coins worth thousands, a double die from 1955, a 1943 struck in bronze instead of steel. These tales ignited a nation's fascination with its own currency, transforming spare change into treasure hunts. The 1952 Lincoln 1 cent, though quieter in fame, became the insider's coin, the one collectors spoke of in hushed tones at shows, the one dealers watched for under the magnifier with reverent caution. Its legend grew not from hype, but from performance, steadily increasing auction results, year after year. Here's where it gets fascinating. Numismatic experts have noted that the demand for mid-century San Francisco strikes, coins between 1941 and 1955, has surged in the last decade. Why? Because as America's collector base matures, they're no longer chasing novelty. They're chasing nostalgia. These were the coins their parents held. The coins that clinked in lunchroom trays, jukebox slots, and gas station change bowls. They're relics of a simpler, more tangible America, an era when value could be held between two fingers. And yet, paradoxically, that emotional connection drives the financial one. The rarer the survival, the stronger the desire. And desire moves markets. The psychology of collecting is often misunderstood. To some, it's a hobby. To others, it's a strategy. A disciplined investment guided by historical data, condition census reports, and market trends. But to true collectors, it's a calling. When a person holds a flawless 1952 Lincoln 1 cent in a sealed PCGS holder, they're not thinking of spreadsheets. They're thinking of Lincoln's resilience, of San Francisco's fading golden age, of a coin that's traveled through time untouched, surviving wars, recessions, and cultural revolutions to arrive in their hands. It's a feeling no stock certificate can offer. Now, here's a thought worth lingering on. Some of the most valuable coins ever sold were not immediately recognized as treasures. They lived unassumingly for decades, passed over, pocketed, spent again. So when you sift through that old jar of change, when you open your father's collection, when you hold that copper disc marked 1952 remember, you might not just be looking at currency. You might be looking at a silent fortune waiting to be acknowledged. That's the beauty and danger of the numismatic world. The line between pocket change and priceless artifact is razor thin. A quick cautionary whisper, counterfeits exist. Some modern forgers use genuine 1952 Lincoln cents and artificially add the S mint mark with microscopic precision. Others alter surfaces to mimic high grades. But here's the safeguard. Truth is visible in detail. Under 5x magnification, an authentic San Francisco mint mark has a delicate curvature, a softness in its edges born from die-punching methods used only in that era. Experts know it instantly. And that's why certified examples hold such power in the market. They're authenticated testaments of America's minting legacy. As the years pass, the supply of untouched copper shrinks. Environmental exposure darkens surfaces, natural oxidation claims brilliance, and careless handling erases potential. That's why pristine coins from this period, especially with their fiery red luster intact, now stand as numismatic miracles. Each one represents the survival of craftsmanship, care, and chance. And that's what gives the 1952 Lincoln 1 cent its mystique. It's not the rarest by mintage, but by condition, by story, by the near-impossible convergence of perfection and time. So where does that leave you, the collector, the investor, the dreamer? Perhaps you already own one, tucked away in a coin album, unseen for years. Perhaps you've passed over hundreds of them without a second glance. But from this moment forward, every time you see that copper coin glimmer under light, remember what it represents. A link to a generation that believed in work, precision, and the quiet dignity of the small things that endure. Because sometimes, the difference between a penny and a fortune is simply knowledge. The 1952 Lincoln 1 cent coin is more than a collectible. It's a reminder that greatness often hides in plain sight, waiting for those who care enough to look closer. And perhaps, as you finish this story, you'll feel the faint itch that every true collector knows, that pull to go searching again. To look through the rolls, the jars, the dusty drawers of family homes. Because somewhere, maybe in your possession, rests a 1 cent masterpiece, a relic of American craftsmanship, carrying the spirit of Lincoln himself and the promise that sometimes the smallest coin can hold the greatest legacy. After all, history doesn't just belong to museums. Sometimes it jingles quietly in your pocket, waiting to be rediscovered. It's the Abraham Lincoln 1 cent coin from the Denver Mint, dated 1955, a coin so ordinary, so familiar, that it vanishes into pocket change. Yet in rare circumstances, this small disc of copper has shattered records, ignited obsession, and turned humble collectors into quiet millionaires. How can a single cent be worth $688,000? That question isn't just about money. It's about mystery, rarity, and the human hunger to find meaning and value where others see only the mundane. Because the story of the 1955 D Mint Mark Lincoln 1 cent isn't simply about a coin. It's about a moment when America's mints, machines, and men collided to produce one of the most beguiling errors in numismatic history. A whisper of imperfection that would become perfection itself in the eyes of collectors. To understand this coin, we must first step into the year 1955. Eisenhower was in the White House. Rock and roll was spreading like wildfire through jukeboxes. The average American earned less than $4,000 a year, and a loaf of bread cost 18 cents. The Mint was working overtime, filling orders to keep up with post-war prosperity. At the Denver Mint, machines thundered day and night, stamping billions of Lincoln cents. Copper planchets, those blank discs, rolled through presses with mechanical precision. But in that endless rhythm of steel and fire, something unexpected happened. A single die, used to strike the coin's design, was paired with a working hub slightly out of alignment. Just a fraction of a millimeter off. The result was a subtle, doubled impression. A second image ghosting over the first. A minting error, yes, but not just any error. This one whispered of human imperfection inside an industrial symphony. And for collectors, that whisper became a siren song. Yet here's the twist. The Denver Mint version of 1955's Lincoln 1 cent is not the same as the more famous Philadelphia double die. The Denver variety is even more elusive, and when it surfaces in immaculate condition, the marketplace reacts like a lightning strike. A flawless 1955 D Memorial Lincoln cent in mint state red condition, especially one showing clear, unblemished surfaces, is a ghost among coins. The Denver Mint's copper output that year was massive, but high-quality survivors are heartbreakingly rare, and that's where value is born, not just in age, but in condition, scarcity, and story. Collectors know this intimately. You can feel it. That slight thrill when a coin slips from your hand under the magnifying glass and something looks different. Maybe it's the placement of the mint mark, the shimmer of the copper surface, the perfect centering of the strike. Maybe your pulse quickens. Could this be it? Because every coin hunter carries that quiet hope. That one overlooked cent, resting in a drawer, might be the one the world forgot until you rediscover it. That's what happened with the 1955 Denver mint cent. For decades, it was dismissed as just another member of the Lincoln Memorial series. Then, numismatists began noticing a peculiar pattern: coins with unusually sharp strikes, brilliant luster, and minimal bag marks. High-grade examples began to emerge from forgotten rolls, uncirculated sets, and estate sales. And when they did, auction houses took notice. In 2022, one such specimen, graded Mint State 67, read by PCGS, once stunned the market when it sold for nearly $688,000. A single cent, sold for the price of a house. It wasn't just the condition that made it valuable. It was what it symbolized. The combination of perfection and chance. A coin born in the chaos of mass production but preserved against all odds. Think about it. How many coins survive unscathed through decades of circulation? They clink in pockets, roll under car seats, fall through floorboards, and get tossed in jars. Most die forgotten, corroded by time. But a few, just a few, remain untouched, protected by collectors who saw something the rest of the world didn't. That's the essence of the numismatist's art. To recognize history when it's hiding in plain sight. And this is where the psychology of collecting becomes fascinating. For many, coins are not merely investments. They're relics of civilization, tangible, enduring pieces of a story that no stock certificate can tell. When you hold a Lincoln cent from 1955, you're touching the metal that circulated through Eisenhower's America, through gas stations, diners, and movie theaters showing Rebel Without a Cause. You're not just holding copper, you're holding time. But here's the deeper truth most people overlook. Rare coins don't just rise in value because of age or mint errors. They rise because of emotion. Collectors chase coins that tell stories of accidents, of craftsmanship, of perseverance. When a coin captures imagination, its value ascends beyond rational metrics. The 1955 D. Lincoln cent isn't famous because of what it is. It's famous because of what it represents. A perfect storm of rarity, nostalgia, and beauty. Imagine being the first person to discover one in brilliant red, glinting like fire under the loupe. The thrill, the disbelief, the quiet realization. You're holding a national treasure. That emotion drives the market. And the market, in turn, rewards that emotion with staggering prices. Of course, where there's rarity, there's always risk, and replicas. As values soared, counterfeiters took notice. Some altered common sense, adding a fake D mint mark to Philadelphia coins. Others used acid to mimic the hue of early copper. But trained eyes and advanced grading technology can always tell. The texture, the rim, the subtle dance of light across genuine mint luster. These details don't lie. This is why certification matters. Professional grading isn't just about a label. It's about trust. A PCGS or NGC seal transforms a coin from an artifact into an asset. And in a world where a 1-cent piece can command nearly $700,000, that seal is worth its weight in gold. Here's a curious thought. What if, somewhere right now, sitting in a forgotten cigar box, lies another flawless 1955 D. Lincoln cent? Waiting? It's entirely possible. Millions were struck, yet fewer than a fraction of a percent survive in pristine condition. The odds are breathtakingly small, but not zero, and that's what fuels the hunt. Collectors don't chase certainty, they chase possibility. The same spirit that sent miners into the Rockies and entrepreneurs into Silicon Valley. That restless American hope that maybe, just maybe, you'll be the one who finds the next lost treasure. But let's pull back for a moment. Why do coins like this continue to rise in value? Because they exist at the crossroads of art, history, and economics. In times of uncertainty, inflation, digital disruption, financial instability, tangible assets gain allure. A rare coin isn't just metal. It's a portable store of heritage, immune to algorithms or market crashes. Over the past decade, the high-end coin market has quietly surged. Wealth managers now treat elite numismatics as alternative investments, with returns rivaling fine art and vintage automobiles. And while many collectors chase gold and silver, it's often the humble copper cent, perfectly struck, perfectly preserved, that outpaces them all. The 1955 D Lincoln cent embodies that paradox, the smallest denomination, holding monumental worth. It reminds us that value isn't dictated by size, but by story. And the story keeps evolving. Each time one of these coins reappears at auction, headlines resurface, reigniting curiosity in the uninitiated. Casual viewers think, a penny worth hundreds of thousands? That can't be real. But those who know, those who understand the language of rarity, lean in, smile, and nod. Because they've seen it happen before. They've watched the unthinkable become undeniable. They know that within every drawer of old coins, every inherited jar, every dusty collection from a grandparent's attic, might rest a piece of American history worth more than gold. So the next time you handle an Abraham Lincoln 1-cent coin from 1955, pause. Tilt it under the light. Look at the sharpness of the rim, the clarity of the mint mark, the gleam of the copper surface. Ask yourself, what story does this coin carry? Because maybe, just maybe, it's not just a coin. Maybe it's a fragment of a greater story, of craftsmanship, of chance, and of the people who believe that treasures still hide in plain sight. And if you're one of those people, the patient observer, the careful hunter, the believer in legacy, then the 1955 D-Mint Mark Lincoln cent isn't just a collectible, it's a mirror, a reflection of your faith in value that endures. In the end, this story is not about copper nor about money. It's about the enduring truth that greatness often hides in the smallest things. Somewhere, a simple 1-cent coin changed a life and continues to remind us that fortune favors not just the bold, but the observant. So check your change, search your rolls, look again at the coins you thought you knew. Because in the quiet glint of a 1955 Denver Mint Lincoln cent, the dream of hidden wealth and lasting legacy still waits to be found. And sometimes, the most extraordinary fortunes begin with something as ordinary as a single forgotten cent. Unbelievable, perhaps, but in the world of rare coins, belief has little to do with it. What matters is rarity, and the stories history forgot to tell. The year was 1957. America stood tall in its post-war confidence. Chevrolets gleamed under suburban driveways. Elvis Presley was redefining music, and a young nation was entering a golden age of prosperity. Amid this optimism, the Philadelphia Mint quietly produced more than 282 million Abraham Lincoln 1-cent coins, each struck in bright reddish copper, each expected to circulate, tarnish, and disappear into everyday commerce. To most, these coins were nothing special. They jingled in pockets, bought cups of coffee, and rested in cookie tins. But hidden among the ordinary lies the extraordinary, those few coins born from minting quirks, microscopic variations, or metallic mysteries that the world would only recognize decades later. And the 1957 Lincoln 1 cent, without a mint mark, became one such legend. But how could something so common, so unremarkable, reach a value higher than most people's homes? It starts with the Philadelphia Mint, the birthplace of America's earliest coinage. Unlike its sister facilities in Denver or San Francisco, Philadelphia didn't mark its coins with a letter. No D, no S, just pure copper carrying the silent signature of the nation's oldest mint. Yet, not all Philadelphia coins were created equal. Some were struck using die varieties, minute changes in the engraving plates that could cause doubled letters, uneven surfaces, or even ghost-like impressions. Most people never notice them, but collectors, true numismatists, spend lifetimes chasing such imperfections. In the case of the 1957 no mint mark Lincoln 1 cent, certain specimens emerged that defied explanation. Their luster, their strike, even their microscopic details, unusually sharp, almost experimental. Were they part of a trial run? A test batch? or the product of an early morning minting anomaly where machinery, metal, and chance converged for a brief, miraculous moment. No official record confirms it, but that's precisely what makes them irresistible. The mystique of the 1957 Philadelphia Lincoln cent isn't just about copper and minting errors. It's about time. Coins like these carry the pulse of an era, a tangible connection to the hands that built mid-century America. Every fingerprint rubbed into its surface tells a story of a life lived. A soldier returning home, a child buying a comic book, a mother saving for a rainy day. When collectors talk about value, they're not only referring to money. They're talking about legacy, the idea that something as small as a 1-cent coin could outlive its owners and echo through generations. Here's where the plot thickens. In the mid-2000s, an uncirculated 1957 Philadelphia Lincoln 1 cent was discovered in pristine mint state 67+ red condition, essentially flawless under magnification. The copper glowed as if it had been struck yesterday, untouched by time. When this coin hit the auction block, seasoned investors held their breath. What was once worth a single cent sold for over $681,000. Why? Because condition, rarity, and historical appeal converged into something almost mythic. The combination of an exceptionally sharp strike, immaculate preservation, and the mystique of its no-mint mark origin turned it into a collector's dream. It wasn't just a coin anymore, it was a time capsule, a piece of living American art. But here's the twist. This extraordinary coin didn't announce itself. It sat unnoticed, like a secret, waiting for the right pair of eyes to recognize its worth. How many 1957 Lincoln 1 cents have passed through your hands? Through vending machines, tip jars, and childhood piggy banks? Hundreds? Thousands? And yet, somewhere, possibly in a forgotten box of coins or an inherited collection gathering dust in an attic, another perfect specimen could be waiting. That's the haunting thrill of numismatics, the knowledge that history hides in plain sight. Let's pause for a moment. Why do grown men and women, doctors, engineers, retirees, spend their evenings examining copper discs under magnifying lamps? Why do they feel that pulse of excitement when a tiny detail, a doubling in the date, or a subtle shift in coloration reveals itself? Because in that moment, they're not just collectors. They're explorers of the past. They're treasure hunters, historians, and dreamers rolled into one. Every coin is a mystery, and every mystery holds the promise of transformation, not just in wealth, but in connection. The modern market for rare American coins has evolved into something more sophisticated than ever. Private investors, hedge funds, and even digital platforms are quietly entering the numismatic world, seeking tangible assets that transcend inflation and uncertainty. And coins like the 1957 Philadelphia Lincoln 1 cent have become a beacon, proof that even the smallest denomination can achieve legendary status when rarity, history, and condition align. Price tracking data shows that high-grade Lincoln cents, especially from the 1950s and early 1960s, are seeing renewed interest. The nostalgia for pre-1982 pure copper coins, combined with the scarcity of uncirculated examples, has pushed demand far beyond traditional hobbyists. In other words, what was once a childhood pastime has become a serious investment class. Here's a thought. If coins could speak, what would they say? The 1957 Lincoln cent might whisper, "Don't judge by denomination." It would remind us that greatness often hides in humility, that wealth can emerge from patience, knowledge, and a keen eye for details others overlook. Many collectors describe their first discovery of a valuable error coin as almost spiritual, a moment of awakening. The flash of realization that something dismissed as ordinary might hold the power to change a life, and that's the real allure. Because when you uncover one of these hidden treasures, it's not just the metal that gains value, it's you. You become part of a centuries-old lineage of seekers who refuse to let history fade. But not all that glitters is gold or copper. For that matter, the market is flooded with counterfeits, altered surfaces, and coins artificially polished to mimic mint brilliance. The untrained eye can be deceived. That's why every serious collector learns the art of authentication, studying mint marks, surface luster, and dye patterns until they can sense authenticity almost instinctively. When a genuine 1957 no mint mark Lincoln scent of extraordinary quality surfaces, experts scrutinize it under precise lighting and digital microscopes. The spacing of the date, the curvature of the letters in Liberty, even the grain pattern of the copper, all become clues in a detective story that can end in a six-figure revelation. In numismatics, truth has a texture, and it rewards those who learn to feel it. Consider this. At one point, a single cent could buy a piece of candy. Today, the right cent could buy a luxury home. That transformation isn't just financial, it's poetic. It speaks to America's journey itself, from modest beginnings to unimaginable success. Collectors know this instinctively. Each coin they preserve becomes a monument to endurance, a small circle of history that defied time and chance. And so, the humble 1957 Abraham Lincoln. 1 cent from the Philadelphia Mint becomes more than a coin. It becomes a mirror, reflecting the values of those who treasure it. Patience, curiosity, and faith in hidden potential. Still, one question remains: how many treasures like this remain undiscovered? No one truly knows. The U.S. Mint has never cataloged every die variation or misstrike from that year. Millions of coins were struck and countless more were melted, lost, or forgotten. Somewhere in that vast unknown, a few pristine survivors are waiting for rediscovery. Perhaps one rests in a coin roll from an estate sale. Perhaps it lies beneath a layer of dust in a coffee can at a flea market. Or maybe it's already in your possession, waiting for you to notice. If you're holding on to a collection, don't underestimate its quiet power. Take another look. Examine each coin with fresh eyes. Under magnification, copper tells its secrets slowly, faint doubling on the numbers, a whisper of an off-center strike, a subtle color shift from red to brown. These are not flaws. They're fingerprints of history, and in the hands of those who recognize them, they can change everything. The story of the 1957 no mint mark Lincoln 1 cent isn't just about money, it's about meaning. It's a reminder that legacy often hides in the simplest things, and that even the smallest coin can carry the weight of centuries. Collectors who understand this don't just chase profits. They preserve the American story, one coin at a time. So, the next time you see that familiar copper glint, pause. Look closer. Feel the texture, the detail, the history pressed into its face. You might just be holding a fortune, or something even more valuable. A connection to the invisible thread that binds past, present, and future. Because in the world of numismatics, the true treasure isn't only in what you find, it's in what you see. And maybe, just maybe, that 1957 Lincoln 1 cent in your drawer isn't just a cent, it's a secret, waiting to tell its story.